Alright, you guys, we're about to get started right now. So if everybody could just please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, good to see some new faces. I want to introduce you guys to a very important person. We met this gentleman during the flag burning ceremony a couple of months ago. He was one of the guys who actually stood up, had the courage to stand up and defend the flag along with one of our members, Raymond, and another member, Diane. He's been an Army veteran from 2001 to 2013, and he's also the founder and CEO of Who's Helping Who? Who's Saving Who? I'm sorry, Who's Saving Who? So I want you guys to give a warm welcome for our friend, Mark Brummitt. So, Mark, you know, I got to tell you, I'm really honored to meet you. I was looking through your website over the past couple of weeks, and I know Ray, he's been trying to introduce us.
Right.
You know, because of schedule conflicts, you know, we haven't really been able to like get you up here. But I'm really glad to see you. Tell me about like what really made you go into the U.S. Army.
Okay. Well, going into the Army was, you know, some people go in for patriotism, some people go in because they need it. I went in for a little bit of both. I got married during my senior year of high school, and I ended up starting to support a family then.
Right.
And I was working construction. I wanted to join the infantry in the Marine Corps, not the Army. And that was my plan. I went into the Marine Corps recruiter's office. I started talking about all the trips they got to take without their families and wives. And my wife at the time said, no, not the Marine Corps. And so I ended up joining the Army.
Right.
And, you know, when I joined with the intent to provide a better life for my family. And after a few years, it became a way of life for me. It became a way for me to define myself. And I found my calling in the military.
Okay.
And, you know, since then I've been divorced and remarried, and a beautiful young lady over there. You know, it's been a time of transition getting out of the military.
Right.
Going into the military, and the reason I stayed initially was because I needed it, and I loved our country, and I wanted to fight for our country. It was pre-9/11, so, you know, there wasn't a whole lot going on. I wasn't planning on going to war right away.
Right.
But that's what happened.
Right. You know? And I'm pretty sure after the attacks, everything just took you off guard. Where did you get deployed to?
Well, right after 9/11, the attacks, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then that day we got alerted that we were deploying, and everybody came in, we got our gear together. They took me to the dentist, ripped out 2 of my teeth, and then we got told we had 12 hours to get up to, or to start to get up to Washington, D.C.
Right.
And so our first deployment was to the Pentagon, and it was while it was still, you know, burning, and we provided security and recovery operations at the Pentagon. It was a pretty tough experience. We spent 7.5 months there, and then I went back to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and then I deployed to Afghanistan.
Wow.
In 2003. So I had a few months back in Georgia before I deployed again. So my first 3.5 years in the military, I didn't spend much time anywhere but basic training, AIT, or deployments.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically prepping up for deployment, basically.
Prepping up for deployment and deploying, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, so I mean, tell us about your experience in Afghanistan. I mean, you know, I hear a lot of people who tell stories. You know, there was a lot of fighting, especially back in those days. You know, post 9/11, with the overthrow of the Taliban. How did that affect you and your unit?
Well, the Taliban was pretty much toppled within 4 days of the special forces going into Afghanistan. And in 2003, when I was there, what was happening was the Taliban were trying to conduct resurgence operations.
Right.
And so they were trying to infiltrate through Pakistan, through the Hindu Kush mountain area, or the Shaikaut mountain region, into Afghanistan to conduct operations. My unit, we performed several functions. One, we performed guard duty at Bagram Detention Facility. Another thing we did was provide for base security at Bagram Airfield. And then the third thing and the fourth thing was we went out and conducted operations, capture, kill operations on Taliban. And we also went out with civil affairs.
Right.
And conducted civil affairs operations where we went out and provided aid and food, medical supplies and equipment to the needy areas of Afghanistan. So we pretty much touched every single facet of what you can do in Afghanistan.
Right. So I'm guessing it was a mixture between, you know, combat operations and humanitarian efforts
Yep.
for the natives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way it is for every deployed soldier. You know, you got to be soft and hard at the same time.
Right.
You got to be able to take care of the local population, protect them while taking out the enemy.
Right. So were the civilians, were they very receptive to you, or were they very hostile? I mean, how did they really feel about these soldiers, you know, these troops coming into their country? And you know, because I know with the media there's always
Right.
this big impression of America that we're
Right.
imperialists. How did they receive you?
Well, that's actually a pretty good question, because going back to the Taliban, when the Taliban initially went into Afghanistan, the Afghans looked at them as liberators. And they looked at them as people that were going to provide protection for the Afghan people. But they didn't realize that Taliban were going to be kind of like a scorpion.
Right.
And eventually they're going to start stinging the people that they protected.
Right.
So just like that, we were received very well in Afghanistan. We were treated very well by the local population. The problem is you never know who your friend is.
Right.
You never know who your enemy is, and anybody can smile in your face and say, hello, nice to see you, and have a suicide vest,
Right.
you know, underneath.
Right.
So, you know, we were received pretty well. There was several times where we were brought in, and the local population, it was their custom to feed you if you're a traveler. And back then, the war hadn't touched every area of Afghanistan as much as it had now.
Okay.
And they kind of looked at us as liberators and travelers, and
Right.
they'd bring us in and they'd hold feasts for us.
Really?
And we'd sit down with the local tribesmen and discuss, just like we do now, discuss, you know, ways forward for the local groups in Afghanistan. The U.S. has shifted more towards a national effort now and trying to let it feed from the national level down in Afghanistan. But back then, we were really focused, and our contingency operations were really focused on the local tribes and what we can do to benefit the local tribes, whether it be, you know, dig them a well, whether it be erect a school. That was one of the major things we were doing back then. We were establishing schools where young females would be allowed to go to schools, and adult females would go to school. They used to, in the 70s, be able to do that.
Right.
Taliban came in, nixed
Right.
it. We set it back up, and they were very receptive to that. very receptive to the medical supplies we brought, food we brought, and in general, the assistance that we provided. So as occupiers, you know, we didn't then, and we still aren't going in as an occupying force where we plan to utilize the resources of that country to benefit us.
Right.
There's no benefit to us being in Afghanistan other than the safety of our country. And our militaries have done a good job of not doing what other militaries do and other militaries throughout history have done. And our values have kept us in check. And so as far as imperialists, I don't see it. I didn't see it then, I don't see it now.
Right. Okay. Well, when you first started Who's Saving Who, I know it launched last year. This past month, it was actually their anniversary as to when it first started. How did your time in Afghanistan really, affect your mission as far as helping veterans through this organization?
Well, my time in Afghanistan is what turned me into a man. And my time in Afghanistan is what taught me about the brotherhood and the community within the military and how close you can become with those around you. When you go to combat with somebody, or even combat veterans throughout the country now, when you go to combat, you join a special group, and it's a group where you're brothers no matter where you're at. And just like being a soldier, you have a brotherhood, we have a connection just like me and you, initially upon meeting each other, just because we know that we're soldiers. With combat veterans, it's the same thing. There's a deep connection and deep respect that we hold for each other. When I got out of the military, I ended up going to the VA facilities. The VA facilities basically demonstrated the utmost level of incompetence that I've ever witnessed in any government-run facility. And the problem was that there were a lot of veterans that weren't getting the care they needed. And when I started Who's Saving Who, I started it with one veteran that I'd met while I was there receiving care, who asked me how I got my older service dog, Chaos. And basically at that point I realized, I'm out of the military now. I don't have a mission for the military. And what am I going to do? Am I going to sit back and let somebody else handle this issue, or am I going to get in there and do something about it?
Right.
And I decided that I needed to get in there and do something about it. So I started Who's Saving Who. And I had a group of people help me launch it. A group of people that worked with me through the last year. A lot of those people have since had to move on or do other things. And I've had to move locations. And we're growing, we're changing, we're expanding as the year evolves. Who's Saving Who is also evolving. But with our combat vets and the experience of our combat vets, I've realized that no matter what the personal cost to me, my time, my money, my resources, whatever it's going to take, I needed to provide for those around me.
Right.
And I didn't feel I had a choice in it at a certain point.
Wow. So, at some point, I'm pretty sure that there was something that really compelled you to help, reach out to veterans who've been affected with PTSD, because that's essentially what Who's Saving Who is really about, reaching out to those veterans who've seen combat. Explain to us, what exactly is PTSD? We all know that it's post-traumatic stress,
Right.
But a lot of people, and I think even people in the military who haven't seen combat like myself, I never had to deal with it. I never really seen combat. I never really had that, mental struggle where, I've been out there in the combat field, I've had people shoot at me, and it's like I'm taking these night terrors home with me. So,
Right.
A lot of times people tend to underestimate it,
Right.
And why is that?
Well, I think that there's a few things that I guess I could talk about there. Within the military,
as the war started, when we thought of PTSD and things like that, we thought of it as a weakness. We thought of it as, you know, the general mentality of the military was, look, leave that stuff at home, you're fine, get back to work.
Right.
And it was through the course of time that we evolved from that point. You know, I mean, in World War II, we had Patton slapping a soldier who had PTSD, and you know, everybody in the world was like, "Whoa, okay." He's like, "Get back to work." But that's kind of the world that I grew up in. It was nice to evolve past that and see the military change to where they started to realize that PTSD was something that was real and tangible for individual soldiers, but also something that didn't incapacitate a soldier if it was treated properly. And with that being said, I've got severe PTSD personally, and the VA ended up rating me 70% for my PTSD. With that being said, I can stand here and I can talk to you. I can talk to a group, but being in a group makes me uncomfortable. You know, I mean, that being in a crowd makes me uncomfortable. Loud noises make me uncomfortable. You know, there's a lot of things that come around me that if it's unfamiliar, I'm uncomfortable with it. A lot of soldiers have different reactions when dealing with PTSD. And, you know, we look at the soldiers that are serving now, but there's a lot of soldiers that have served previous. And, you know, we have our Vietnam vets, our Korea vets, and a few World War II vets left. And a lot of those soldiers are carrying around the scars of the battles that they've had to face, or even if it wasn't a battle that they faced, it may have been something they saw or something they did or something that they were a part of that's affecting them today. And really, affecting them today is what I see PTSD as. It's not necessarily something that's debilitating them today, but it is something that's affecting them today. And so what I think we need to realize is, one, war affects everybody. You know, just like a car accident can affect you for the rest of your life. War is going to affect you as a soldier, good or bad, for the rest of your life. You're going to carry that experience with you into the future. What we need to do is we need to start realizing that, you know, PTSD isn't a disease. You don't need to push it away like it's something that you're going to catch. What you need to do is you need to embrace individuals that do have PTSD and develop a strong support network. You know, earlier we were talking, and the veteran suicide rate is extremely high.
60 a day.
And so what we're looking at right now is we're looking at soldiers that are coming back and are affected by the war, whether it's PTSD or depression or anxiety, any number of things could be affecting them. It doesn't all revolve around PTSD. Some guys have physical injuries. They've lost their legs, they've lost their arms, they've lost their eyesight. Some guys have lost their families over it, you know. There's a lot of things to lose when you sign your name on that line for the country. And so when you meet somebody who served and you say thank you and you let them know that you appreciate their service, that's first and foremost what anybody out there can do, is just say thank you. And number two, provide assistance in any way you can that's non-intrusive. One of the biggest issues that I face having a service dog is everybody wants to ask me what it's for. And when I tell them, you know, she's a medical service, well, what type of medical? Okay, well, she helps me with physical injuries and PTSD. Well, I don't see anything wrong with you. It's like, look, guy, you meet me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the fetal position. You can come look at me balled up then, you know. It really increases the stress factor. Right. So, you know, that's something that we really need to be aware of is, okay, that this individual's been affected, let them seek help in their own way and what they need for their